up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Games Recap.
Morning, guys. Thanks for coming back because I know you've been here before. We're two guys who put on a show talking about big news in the game industry. Guy number one, Brandon Pham. Guy
What's
number
up?
two, Larry Charles. Longtime game developers, happy to be here this morning. And Mr. Brandon Pham, why don't you hit them with that pre-roll?
All right. So if you're watching us on live, thank you. If you want to chat with us, we do value your opinions on our twitch.tv/blue_champs. If you are watching this after the fact, that's fine too on our youtube.com/bluechamps. If you're supporting us through patreon.com/bluechamps to help support the show and also to achieve our next goal, which is to make this show in specific a audio podcast on your daily commute. If you are supporting in other ways, like being a Twitch Prime subscriber, or hitting that donate button underneath our Twitch channel, that is rightfully feeding us, and we are eternally grateful for that.
Yeah. We had Subway sandwiches once, so thank you to all the people who have already given us their Twitch Prime membership subscription for the month. So now let's jump on into that news. I have a pretty juicy article today. It's going to be a good reflection on, I guess, where things are in the industry between indies and Steam. Brandon, you have that title.
So I'm going to switch over. This is something I came across. It's the conversation that's been long going. We've been peppering it in with our previous broadcasts, talking about what is going on with Steam and do they care about indies, right? Because every move they've made in the past year and a half have been a mark against indie development. Starting with their price model sheet, which was favorable to games that are already doing well, and unfavorable to games that aren't, which are mostly indie developers, right? In addition to that, a lot of the complaints where it's super saturated right now in the market, and Steam's kind of taking a back seat, just letting everyone trying to discover things on their own. They're not really helping or giving any initiative at the time where we feel like they need the indie support as much as possible, because a lot of AAA developers are kind of exiting that platform to launch their own games in their own. So it's a weird time for Valve. They basically are probably looking at that and seeing the value of their company, because they are really dependent on third-party publishers to make their company successful. So a lot of those moves have resulted to them creating a VR hardware. The what was it called? The VR Index.
The Index headset.
Yeah, where they kind of demolished their own department years ago, saying that it's not a focus, but suddenly it became a focus. In addition to that, they're talking about 3 exclusive VR games that are being in development for it. One of it being rumored Half-Life experience. That's what I've heard.
And the E in experience, does it look like a 3?
Yeah, exactly, right. And so they are making a lot of moves right now as a company, and one of them being to help, it feels like, discoverability. So we're going to look at this article right here to see the type of changes they have. So I believe they're still calling it Steam Labs. The specifics of it is kind of general for me. I don't know the exact details. I just know that it sounds like some kind of indie initiative, but without being branded as that, right? Which is a weird messaging. It's just call it that if that's that. If it's not the focus, make it the focus, because that will win a lot of developers back.
Yeah, you can't just release the tools, but without declaring that you're taking some sort of long-term look at trying to fix that, or like a public initiative to say, hey, we acknowledge that we've done this, and here's our plan to fix that. And then here's phase 1 where we've rolled out 2 to 3 things. Yeah. And then here's the plan for the next 5-6 years. That's how you get an indie community to reinvest, or at least pay attention. You know what I mean? We want to know what you're doing, but also what you plan to do, because indie especially has to look at their future and where they think the market's going to be, but where they think their funds are going to be, or where they think their opportunities are going to be 2-3 years in advance, even if their games are 6-month development cycles or less.
And so, as noted, this is an article on Game Industry Biz. It's been a rough year for indies. I'm just reading this off, and then we're going to analyze it paragraph by paragraph. To be fair, 12 indie developers I've spoken to over the last 6 months has informed her, the writer, that it's been several years for indies having a tough time on Steam. So the last year has been especially rocky thanks to a series of discoverability issues and communication missteps that have left a lot of indie developers feeling ignored and or deliberately hamstrung at worst. So yeah, I mean, these are things that we talked about on our own podcast many times when we have guests on. Steam isn't the first place you go to anymore. It's like it is a place that you should have a presence, but you're not relying on it for any sales anymore, right? So, for example, a sudden unexplained change in Steam's algorithm in October caused a sharp traffic drop for many. And just a few weeks ago, confusion about the Steam summer sale resulted in indie games being removed in mass from users' wish list.
Man,
that's a huge...
Bro, I get so nervous when I hear the word algorithm now, just because I'm used to like the YouTube economy of like, oh no, my channel is going to use X, Y, and Z. But those algorithms never cover everybody. They're usually designed to best promote, best help who owns the platform. And then obviously like the top tier content developers there, because who would you rather lose? PewDiePie? Or Meg's channel of how I make different types of tortillas or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, and if you guys don't know, the wish list for indie developers is everything now. They're relying on that to get some data on how many sales that they're going to make, right? Because they only get a percentage of that. And to kind of lose that because of a algorithm is a huge blow. That
I don't understand at all, though. Like, unless it was a bug, you know what I mean? Like, why changing the algorithm of how people see or how stuff is promoted would, like, people who have like clicked on, I would like this game to be on my wish list. Then all of a sudden, nope, algorithm decides you actually don't spend at a high enough threshold for that game to be on your wish list in that genre. So we've removed it.
Well, to me, it's whatever. Like a rusty engineer at Valve. Fuck. They just got back from their annual Hawaii trip, and he just thought he was being kind of clever. So I guess I'll do some work, and then it's like, oh fuck. That's what happened. Yeah. So let's see here. Also, there were several other events from the last year that directly affected or at least demoralized smaller developers. Some of these included a threatened takedown of some indie games due to supported pornographic content, a vague new content policy, and API adjustments that hurt Steam Spy, made helpful data less accessible to indies. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. New revenue sharing tiers that only benefit games are already bestsellers. Yes, that's the most recent one. It's easy to see how these can be scope year could be disheartening for small developers, especially when struggling to get notice on gaming's largest storefront, PC storefront. And most of the developers I spoke to acknowledged that the basic challenge of discoverability when there are just too many video games isn't Valve's fault. Yes, that's true.
I agree there.
Valve has the inviolable problem of figuring out how to categorize tens of thousands of games to users to provide some visibility to gamers. However, many of these same developers also experienced frustration that while in the early days of Steam Greenlight, there were numerous benefits to having a game appear on the platform. Those benefits have largely dissolved. As the library of games has exploded, they say Steam's decision to rely on changing algorithm rather than curation has hindered rather than helped their games, resulting in steep drops in traffic, unpredictable game sales, and an increase in the amount of time and expense needed for marketing. So this is where I feel Steam they're already following Apple's footsteps, where those two marketplaces have faced or reached a height of oversaturation, and so have made similar moves. So the way Apple have evolved and trying to address the issue is that they actually return to curation to kind of unmuddle their storefront, right? So that they have like, these are the games you should check out because these are handpicked by Valve staff. Like, and this is true for any mega store, but also any like journalists. You go to a news article, you have like editor's pick or trending or some kind of categorization. I mean, Steam has some glimpse of that, but like to not make that the primary thing that you look at, like a huge front facing. That's what I'm liking actually from Epic right now. Like if I go to Epic, I know these games have been vetted and they're all quality. Right? I know every single game on there is quality stuff. And so that's what's missing at Valve that I feel like they need to return. Like Steam Greenlight was not a perfect system, but it was on the way to becoming a better system. but instead they took several steps back and kind of relied on. I understand the scalability of things, but I think it was the wrong move to kind of rely on the computer telling you what's great or not.
From what I remember, Steam Greenlight, you had 3 projects kind of vying for public support simultaneously, and then was it like a best man wins kind of scenario where these are the 3 games that we're considering greenlighting?
Yeah, well, the idea is like to have
like that.
It was some kind of upvoting system,
it's been a while.
right, to bring an audience in.
Yeah.
So if you have an audience that upvotes it, the top games will actually get into the Steam store. So it's a popularity contest, which I feel
I can see why someone would set it up to be that way.
Yeah, I think is very helpful, right? If your game is being supported, people want it to happen on the store.
Yeah,
it can become. It was like an event, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, go over here, upvote my game, get it in there. All right, the games this month are these, and I think that will encourage or even discourage, right? Both indie developers to submit and see if their game actually shows up or not.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair process because what the end result will be is like consumers are faced with great games that there's a following, has a chance. Yeah. There is a problem with too many games, and I don't think you should completely. My camera's so high. I don't think you should completely like abandon developers who want to submit their game because. I don't think that fixes the issue either, right? To completely forget all these people, right? Let's say there's 1,000 games, and you only let 15 in, right? I don't think that's the solution either. I think a combination of what they've been doing, which is kind of let everybody in, but in addition have a curation track where their front page is kind of really helping indie developers that are notable.
What's interesting is like the ones that need curation are the like hidden gems.
Yeah.
Everything else can be auto-generated just based on the data. Like, what are the top selling 10 games right now? That literally is a button click on an Excel sheet for back-end Steam, right? Yeah. What is the, I don't know, highest grossing 10 games? What are the fastest selling in 24 hours 10 games? Like, there's different ways to discern, like, which games are movers or shakers super easily. Yeah. The hard part about the curation I could see is the, like, okay, now, out of these 22,000 games that got submitted this week, which ones do we think that, like, hey, we just want this game to be spotlighted because it's an interesting concept or it's, like, it is going to do well as long as people know about it. You know what I mean? Where are those gems? That's where they actually have to have the human touch. But you could probably set up 10 category lists easy with just data sorting based on their back-end data right now. And I think that even that would be, and they kind of have that, right? Like they have the page where you can see what's the number 1 games and you can see, and then you can break it down by category and stuff. But the auto curation is fine because it's dominated by the big games because obviously they had a budget to market. People know that they're coming out. They're usually big franchises like, oh, wow, Street Fighter's on Steam. I mean, I'm sure you're going to hear about that before you hear about, I don't know, someone else's like small indie team new game. You know what I mean? So yeah. That's the reality that we're dealing with. And what I want to touch on, though, is there's a key point that was said is like, hey, Steam is a platform, right? But like, whose fault is it that there's an oversaturation of games being made right now that's forcing Valve's hand in trying to deal with how do we sort through all this? How do we make sure like the cream rises to the top on our end? You know what I mean? Like the game developer needs to do their job to make sure that it happens on their end. But like we're almost holding Steam accountable for things that they more or less don't have to be responsible for, but we are expecting them to do something about it. That's just an interesting position.
It is an interesting position because they are the non-traditional. They're not a publisher. Yeah. They're not like GameStop either, right? Where they just sell games. They are a game developer at the very core, and those are their roots. So we expect a little more from them because they've been through the trenches as a company to establish this platform that was meant to democratize games, right? And it felt like they just stopped halfway through, right? They dominated the market. Instead of just leading the market, they're kind of just taking a backseat the last few years. And yes, the most activity that we've seen for a long time is their resources being put behind VR Index. fine, right? If I think VR is the future, and it does take a company like Facebook and even Steam to really buy in to accelerate that, because aside from PlayStation being happy with the numbers, there's really no one else, right? And there are rumors behind that where PlayStation might be coupling their PlayStation 5s with a VR headset. There's a lot of rumors going through, and that's a huge move.
Wow.
That's a huge move. So if they do that, that will legitimize, in my opinion, more so than anything Oculus is seen doing. As if they package this PS5 with the VR, they should. That is the next gen gaming.
Well,
like if they just come up with a box with a controller again, we've had 2-3 generations of that.
If you unpack that, right, like if PlayStation 5 is saying, hey, we believe that we want an experience jump again, because I've said this many times on Game Dev Unchained even. It's like I remember the day that I saw PlayStation 1 graphics because I was used to playing Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
I remember the day I saw PlayStation 2 graphics because I was used to PS1.
Yeah.
PS3 even.
It was a big jump.
It's like it started to level off though, because the jump from Super Nintendo to PlayStation 1, of course. PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 1, of course.
Yeah.
PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 2, like I can tell.
Yeah.
PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 3, like okay, it's not as big of a
it's
jump
not a big
anymore.
of a jump
it's
anymore.
It's not that big of a sale as far as graphic fidelity and visual quality. So knowing that PlayStation 5 would be doubling down on, how we make games better, more exciting, is literally putting you in the game with VR. And so if they're adopting that as their major pitch front, then I can see that big jump coming back. All of their games can have VR accessibility. It could be what the VR industry would love is like 30, 40, 50 million single SKU supporters of VR.
There's a lot of selfishness that is going on right now. With everyone. Last time we saw this type of behavior is with the phones, with the smartphones. Everyone came out with their own phones, right? I think it's very irresponsible to kind of think like the phones are equating to the VR set. No one's gonna buy a VR set like a phone, right? Phone is multifunctional. It's multi-purpose.
And it's also very personal too.
It's very personal. And so if I was Facebook, man, I don't know. I guess Sony has enough grounds to be like, we'll make our own VR headset. We don't need you, right? But there needs to be some kind of coalition as an industry. It's like, hey, we all are in this to make this part of the industry grow. What can we do? And I would go to PlayStation and be like, you are in the best position right now to dominate the market, to make this everyday thing, right? They sold through 4 million of those VR headsets. That's more. That's more than anybody. And we're not talking about different versions. We're talking about the same version.
Technically, they're the leader in VR.
They are the leader, right? Wow. And so they are in a great position to go to PS5 and do this. So, like, with Valve, like, it was very confusing, right? For them, eventually, yes, their VR index or whatever will improve and make it better and whatever. It's going to be wireless and all this stuff. It's very confusing to me as a consumer, as a game developer. So why are you cluttering the market, right? It's like, is it just something that you can... Do you really think that VR index is going to be the number one headset in any category? High fidelity... Maybe not really. We're talking about $1,000 headset, by the way.
Even if it's so far behind the game that, like, even if they win in any category, their adoption rate is still going to be super low.
Yeah, and people need to stop being confused about the Vive Index. Oh, let's see, I just did it. The Valve Index and the Vive. Yes.
Their names are so similar.
Their names are very similar, and like Valve did help
with the Vive.
With the Vive, but they don't own the Vive. That's HTC. So them coming out with their own kind of just, well, it illustrates that they don't own the Vive, right? Why would they come with the competitor? It's not like Oculus, where they own all three different gear, VR, and all that stuff. But
man, is the Index wireless or no?
No, not the first one.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah, this one is like full on with the tetheredness and having all the cameras, basically. So it's very old school vibe.
Yeah, and
right. But their next iterations and stuff will probably improve. But like that's their first headset, and it's $1,000. Yeah, it's probably one of the higher
PC required.
PC required, of course.
So So it's $1,000 plus. Make sure you have a PC.
Exactly. And they're gonna release 3 VR games for it. Probably not exclusive, right? Probably they're gonna make it available in Oculus. But why make the first headset
$1,000? Like, that's such a steep. The thing is, if I think of the average consumer, and I don't want to sway this away from what we were talking about originally, but I do want to say this. If I'm thinking of the average consumer who wants to get into VR, a $400 Vive, like original Vive off Amazon, does the trick. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to be so upset that you didn't spend the extra $600 to wait for the Index to have like some sort of mind-blowing experience that if you really look at it on paper, it's probably going to be marginally better as far as like the average consumer.
It can't be. Yeah, it can't be.
You
I mean, I've read the reviews where the hand controller is a little better, but like you said, it's marginally better. It's not revolutionizing the game.
From
right?
someone who hasn't done it at all, $400 to get in the door is a lot better than $1,000 to get in the door.
Yes. So I don't know what their move is. Like, they can't possibly think that their Index is going to dominate the VR market, right? They're not going to overtake Oculus, right? They're not going to overtake Vive, even their own friend. So I don't understand the move behind it. I do understand if they wanted to buy into the VR experience as their own game, because that market needs like a killer app, right? There's none right now.
Yeah.
What, Beat Saber is the closest?
Beat Saber is dope.
Beat Saber is fun and everything, but it's not making people jump off. Like, even for me, like, it's cool, but I want a game, right? For the VR experience. We
want what we're used to, right? Where like some sort of progression, challenges, adventure, story. Excuse me.
Yeah, I don't go out there trying to play Guitar Hero, right? It's fun, but it's not like day one buy for me. It's like a party thing, right?
Yeah. Sure, Beat Saber is very novelty. I will say this though, like, it really does. It's a great way to introduce somebody to virtual reality because it's a simple concept.
Yes.
And it's a really well done execution.
Yes. It's a game that you want to bust out when friends are over.
It's great to show off VR.
But it's don't know it. But it's not me in a living room. It's like, I want to beat some sabers, you know.
I would love a game like a Phantasy Star Online for like a VR.
Yeah.
Like, that game was RPG mechanics, but it was a super simple system. And it was just about grinding and seeing cool stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you were playing the same levels over and over and over and over and over because you wanted a cool thing.
Yeah.
Not because you were really having X amount more fun because you've done it 20 times versus 10 times.
Yeah.
It was, you had specific goals.
Yeah.
It was simple. It just kept repeating and people loved it.
Yeah.
A game like that I think would be pretty dope on VR.
Yeah. Well, I mean, talking about VR, Valve's moves lately, it's just been more and more confusing. And we were talking about how PlayStation 5 could possibly couple with the set. I think it'll be a brilliant move on their part if they do it. I mean, it'll cost a little more, of course, but for them to jump into still hardware and everyone's kind of talking about the streaming thing, it'll be a great way to be like, hey, you still require hardware, right? Yeah. But like, these VR guys, I think Valve is in the best position. They should have just went, let's fuck the hardware, right? We're not a hardware company, right? Why are we going into this business? What are we expecting out of it? Yeah. Forget that. Let's just focus. If we want a VR game, that's fine, right? Let's really help this market grow. Instead of trying to control it, let's approach Sony. Like, let's make some exclusives here and really have some launch software for this VR set. Oh my God. Yeah. That will blow up PlayStation 5. That will help alleviate any risk on Valve's part, right? They're not going to lose money. They're going to be gaining money day one. Yeah. So as a company, they'll be stronger. I don't understand this Index thing, man. Yeah. It's not making me want to go out there and try even sell me thing. I'm just hearing from it. It's like, I don't care to try.
The interesting thing that we have to continue to remind ourselves about Valve is they're in print money mode because of Steam. Yeah. So like, even if this is a complete flop, what does that really mean in their finances? You know what I mean? So like, they have the resources to be ambitious, to push technology, to do whatever crazy ideas they want, and probably not even feel it by the next fiscal quarter. Sure. So that's why I would say, well, it's probably because they don't care if they lose. They believe that they have the best VR system and they want that technology to exist. So like, they have such confidence. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because either way, they're fine.
Yeah.
So they may as well, I guess. That's probably what the outlook
But
is.
it just also makes me feel they're so out of touch with what's going on. It's like, why are you doing this? If their whole purpose is to up their value as a company,
Sure.
This is your best idea, right? It really makes me question like their moves, man. Like they just recently bought Valley and the Gods.
Yeah.
Haven't heard much about them. I'm sure that team is being split up to work on other projects.
Half-Life experience.
Yeah, Half-Life experience. Maybe some people are left on Valley of the Gods. This is me guessing, but that's how when you work at a company with multiple projects, you're gonna be pulled.
You're gonna get repurposed.
You gotta repurpose, and so yeah, man, I'm just disappointed, man, because they're not doing anything in any fronts that they have their foot in the market in, and excelling in anything, right? They still have their Steam store, sure.
Yep.
They're still number one PC market. Epic is a threat, but come on, it's a fly kind of bothering you, right? It's nothing on Steam's level yet.
Yeah.
Right. But it's even then, the last few months, I haven't heard anything that they're doing aside from the discoverability. And when I'm reading through this, it isn't even that big of a thing, right? So Steam gives a bare minimum package now, says a developer. It's not anything at all. When the indie movement started out, though, that wasn't the case. If you actually made it on Steam, you got some exposure for that. Being on Steam gave you bragging rights. Yes, that's completely gone.
Yeah.
Several developers, including Megan Fox of Glass Bottom Games and Emma Mason of Kitsumi Games, told me that they were previously successful indie studios are beginning to hedge against the probable just decrease in attention their games now will receive by planning on advance and putting more resources into marketing than were necessary. Well, I mean, that's of course.
Okay.
You got to do that.
I'm clapping for that because one of the big things that I feel like we've been echoing for years is if you don't have marketing budget for your game, I mean, you're being financially irresponsible with the idea of thinking that you're going to make your game and be successful in the first place. You have to have your marketing budget in your game development budget. Like you can't just be like, we're going to take $1 million to develop this game and then we're going to Facebook spam our friends.
Yeah.
You need to know before you even start putting Gold Master candidate build together that you literally have people who are paying attention to, who have resources for, doing nothing more than making sure people know that your game exists.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is beyond Steam, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's future-proofing yourself because if you're relying on algorithms, there is no accountability on that side, right? This is an Apple problem. This is a Steam problem. Any store that is saturated, to make noise, you have to have a noise budget, right, within your own game company. So you should be doing this anyways. And the only way you can be successful, despite of all the issues and who holds the key to the gates in the marketing world, this is the way for you to kind of be safe.
Yeah. If you build it, they will come. It doesn't work anymore. It did when there was 100 games being uploaded to Steam a day.
Yeah.
Now when there's thousands, you know what I mean? The saturation point it really just means one thing to the indie developers. Understand that that's just how it is now, right? And plan accordingly. Don't go in there with expectations or complaints that a company is not doing something in your best interest. A company completely separate from you, acting in its own best interest. You can't be upset that they're not doing the things that you want and demand and expect that will give you success, but take from them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously, Steam is optimized to make Steam as successful as possible.
Yeah.
And they're always going to try to make Steam as successful as possible. If your goals do not align with Steam's goals, you cannot expect Steam to do any more than whatever they do for you. Like whatever bone they throw you, they don't owe you that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like in today's market, especially to all the people out there who are thinking about making games, small teams, whatever, big teams, I don't care. Market. Like that is now a responsibility for you as a game developer if you want to be in the business of games development.
Yes.
Marketing, learning how to reach customers is just as important as your game designer, in my opinion. Now, you cannot just make the product and think you're going to show it off anymore.
Yeah.
You got to sell tickets to that art gallery.
Yeah. I mean, more of these social platforms or stores are relying on algorithms to get their games automated, right? Yeah. And it's becoming less and less control for developers to kind of predict and rely on. And one of the issues with Steam in the past year has been because they implemented new code. Yeah. And that's been messing with breaking point for many developers to begin working, voicing their concerns publicly, right? So similar drops in traffic, no explanation had happened before. The one in October seems to be the most widespread and dramatic. After the blow, it's no wonder that the Steam Summer Sales wishlist misunderstanding went over the way it did. There's a certain carelessness that Valve is clearly showing, right? Where they don't care. They don't care. And when that happens, there's a distancing between the Champions platform, where it used to be the People Champions platform, right? Where now it's just like you're just like any other fucking publisher, guys.
Well, to me, Steam is becoming like digital Best Buy, right? Like, they're going to be Steam. It's going to be a great place to buy games, but you're going there because you know that you will get the PC copy of whatever exclusive, favorite, awesome, big budget, big title game that you want to get. But the like hand curated, handcrafted, mom and pop shop game development stuff, you have to know those people or know about their games otherwise, because you're going to see a lot less of that on Steam. Yeah. So like that independent underbelly market, that like the I got published game developers are going to have to find new ways or new opportunities, because it sounds like Steam isn't course correcting in their favor fast enough with as much intent as those developers would like.
Right. And that's exactly the next point. Like one of the indie developers, Cahill's lament that Valve hadn't made amends is the other common thread throughout every major incident that had an impact on indies in the last year. And none of the developers are fed up with what they see as a lack of communication from the company. Games are warned or removed from Steam. The already mysterious algorithm is changed. The rules of promotion aren't made clear, and they aren't told what's happening. One developer who asked to remain anonymous told me they attended a GDC meeting for indie developers to speak to Valve representatives as a sort of damage control following the algorithm issues in 2018. However, they said that the meeting ended up being more condescending than anything. It felt like parents telling kids why they have to eat their vegetables. At one point during the meeting, developers asked if they could have some kind of guide or checklist of what Steam was looking for in-game for it to be promoted and given more visibility. According to the anonymous developer, Valve's response was, if we gave you that checklist, you would use it.
Well, of course. Why would they ask for it if they didn't plan on...
It sounds like a very Condry-esque bonus type of... That's when you start crossing over to the corporate dark side. It's like, are you forgetting the whole purpose of why you created this? Because you too were frustrated at one point of having no control on how your game is being portrayed or sold out there or promoted. Like, it's crazy that they've gone from there to like, this is what I'm saying, man. This is where I always preach to you, where a person doesn't know their full self until power is given, right? Even with me being so certain of who I am as a person, being dirt poor is not the same as being a king, right? And so now they're king of the mountain, and this is what they're doing, which really, to me, tells you or us or anybody that values Valve their true character in all this. It's just, yes, they're another money-grubbing...
I don't understand the responses. If we gave it to you, you would use it. Like, I'm racking my brain right now trying to think, one, why, even if that's literally how you felt, why you would ever say that to the people who, like, clearly this is town hall. Right? Like, these people want problems to be worked out. And they say, hey, okay, so you have this algorithm, you have these things that you guys look for what makes a game worthy of being shown. We want our games to be worthy of being shown. Let's meet in the middle. Why don't you tell us what you look for so we can... Oh, you want pancakes for breakfast? Cool. Let me go make pancakes.
Yeah.
No. Sorry. Look, I kind of just want to walk into this restaurant and have you guys just make stuff, and then I'm going to pick what I like.
Yeah.
Right? You don't... If I told you what I wanted, you would make it. Like a fucking course.
Yeah. So I think...
I don't understand.
For me, when I read that, what I hear is that they have a resource problem, right? Every Steam move that they've made is to kind of close the gate from the siege, right? They're so afraid of, like, holding that gate up a little because it's going to flood in all this work for them that they cannot handle currently. They are a small company.
Fair evaluation.
Yeah, they're a small company, right? They can't handle the interests that everybody has. So for them to gate with these algorithms, it's a way for them to kind of process.
But them being
everything.
small is like completely on them.
That is on them. They are so greedy. Where it's like, you guys can afford to grow and make this work and fix these complaints and still have enough on the side to go on your Hawaii trips, you know?
I'm assuming if we look at the grand scheme of things, there's probably just some sort of unproportionate amount of money that they get from managing less titles because bigger budget, like, okay, like Square Enix games are on Steam, right?
Yeah.
Imagine how many units those things drive over 10 games, right?
Yeah.
Versus how many different individual indie games you're going to have to manage over to get that same amount of sales.
Yeah.
Right? We're talking thousands, maybe even multiple thousands. Well, thousands, plural is already thousands. Anyway, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, like, the amount of work to, like, hey, let me just make sure Squaresoft is good to drive sales versus let me go make sure this whole ass community is good.
Yeah, this is where...
I can see that being a, like, all right, look.
This is where being an IPO company is actually good for the growth of the company, right?
Sure.
Because we're dealing with 300, 500 plus, let's say 1,000, right? It's still not enough for what they're dealing with as a business. They're basically a Best Buy chain, right?
Yeah.
Plus Amazon, right? So they are filled with cash in their pockets where they like, what's the difference between 1 billion and 10 billion? It's like, why bust our ass, right? There's no need. There's no incentive for me to try harder, right? We're earning as we can handle, right? And we're growing-ish, right? We don't need to do any more. And that's where, like, a private company like Valve, when they go into IPO, where it is helpful, right, to kind of always think about quarterly profits, right? Quarterly results. It's like, well, last year we had $1 billion. Now, how do we get to $2 billion? Yeah. I feel like they stopped that type of thinking. They're probably fighting against it, right? They hate that idea. But the complaints, you've grown so much that the complaints have piled up where it can't be ignored anymore. Like the news about Valve in their interwebs now has been mostly blasphemous, right? It hasn't been good. There's nothing about Valve news lately have been like applauding their efforts. It's more like, what the fuck are you doing? The indie developers that you created the platform for essentially are against you. Third-party developers don't think you give a fair price. They're all leaving. And as a game developer, it's like, what games are you fucking making, dude? Like, where's my games? VR?
Bro, okay.
$1,000
if they made
to play your VR game?
If they made a game and the game sold 1 million copies, I still don't even think that would show up on their radar.
Yeah, it's a loss. It's like, we could have just sat back.
We could have done
and
nothing,
earned $1 million
and made that money. The cost going into making that game, right?
Yeah.
Every day that we don't do that is money that we
But this is what I'm saying. They're in a spot where everything that they do, every arm that they have out there in the market has been underperforming. Yeah. It's like, well, guys, come on. Button up.
I guess
stop moving your free form office, right? Stop rolling your tables around and do some fucking work. Like it's that's an inside joke. Yeah. They have tables on wheels.
Such an interesting position to me, like just trying to gut check evaluate their business based on what I know. They deal in all digital products. Yeah. The Steam box didn't come out that I know of.
Right. But they do have a warehouse.
They have their hardware that's about to come out now. So like until that goes on sale, in my mind, Valve Steam is an all digital service, the biggest for PC sales right now.
And they're a small company.
They're moving, I'm assuming, billions, right? Billions of digital, as in like just make sure the two
server
computers
space.
Are on,
they only have
so
server
that we
space.
Can send,
exactly.
We don't have to go carry. We don't have to go DHL, UPS, USPS. We don't have to do any of the like
very profitable.
Oh my god,
business. Jesus. That's what I'm saying, right? It's like me and you, right? We got this thing. raking in billions, and they're asking us to do more. It's like, why? Right? But that's the problem with a private company. They're so fat where they don't see the reason to move.
Private company doesn't have a boss. And if they're already successful, if they already see that their
They're
trajectory
good.
is just going to continue until there's a major shift that they have to deal with. And even then, I mean, I'm sure Valve is like, what do we do with this money? Right? Like, what do we do to make sure that we're not just leaving bank accounts full of cash?
Let's do VR. Like, that's where I'm like, you are so out of touch. You have that's a move where like you have so much money left over that you actually think that this is a good idea.
God, I just want.
It's not a business marketing strategy for sure. Like when they shut down that department, that was the smartest thing they did, right? No disrespect to the developers that was over there, but yeah, like it's a flooded market with devices. Why are you adding another hardware where it's more about for this VR market to catch on, and it hasn't, right? There needs to be a coalition. There needs to be these guys sitting together. It's like, let's stop competing against each other and let's focus on software and make sure that people want these devices in general, right? It's crazy when I go to the store and freaking Samsung has a device. I was like, I didn't even know they had a device, but they have one. It's like, what the hell? I wonder if some kind of like espionage, man, to kind of make sure that this hardware business doesn't take off, because it feels that way. If I were to like, I don't want this hardware to take off. I want to like punch Facebook in the gut and make sure they don't grow. How do I do that? I'm going to put out $50 headsets with no software behind, because come on, there's 1,000 headsets. There's no good reasons for a software to be paired with them. This is exactly what's happening with the market. You go to a Best Buy or Amazon or anything, there's like 10,000 VR things, and it's like, why?
I think long-term VR and AR are going to win hand over fist. I think the traditional flat screen gaming experience is going to be redheaded stepchild at some point. I don't know when, but I'm telling you, VR, AR.
It's going to happen. Everyone thinks that, but the steps are missing right now.
I think the hard part is when I think about the video game industry in its infancy, especially home consoles, right? We had like maybe 1-2 choices, major choices.
Yeah.
Nintendo, Atari, then Nintendo, Sega, and that kind of just ended up being where you were going. And then sure, there were like little upstarts who tried to come in, and then they failed. And then other things that tried to come in, and then they failed. But for the most part, your consumers, your entire audience for home consoles had a couple of choices.
Yeah.
Get games for your computer, get games for your Nintendo, get games for your Sega. I think Atari had even dropped out of the race once it had become Nintendo Sega.
Yeah.
So it's like almost a 50-50 because a lot of people had computers and they had a home game console. You know what I mean? Now, VR and AR is also competing with just the traditional gaming consoles. Yeah. Right? So you have PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and you have a PC. Then you have your VR also as like, so there's much. So many, and this is before we even start talking about all the different ways that you can play VR. Magic Leap, Oculus Quest, Oculus Go, Oculus Regular, Vive Pro, Index, all this 90 choices of entertainment platforms, right? Means 90 platforms that are going to die.
And this is where I feel PlayStation and their position and why their strategy is going to trump all. All right.
No one. For one.
That's
smart.
Not just that. The last generation, they just released their headset, and no one really thought about them in the game. Right. It was all about Oculus. Yeah. It was all about Vive. Right. PlayStation is like, well, we'll release a headset, and just sneakily became like the leader by a clear 4 million. Right. Sold the most. Didn't confuse the market with multiple headsets, different versions. It's like, here's our headset. It's sleek. It's cool. It works. It's not the most powerful, but we have the fucking console. We've been in the game console business for such a long time. We know how to make fucking hardware and sell it directly to gamers, right? So all this clutter that's happening, PlayStation, I think, even my Xbox, if Xbox is going to go hard with the AR stuff, but we haven't been hearing too much about them, right? PlayStation is going to lead the way. They are leading the way. They're going to dominate the market, right? Because they are giving exactly what they have been gathering data the last few years. You know, the gamers dictate the sales. Provide good games, provide a good headset that feels comfortable, and let's package it. I really hope that they do, because if they do, man, that's the VR market finally established. Finally, there's numbers that developers can point to and say, like, we're going to create a VR game for the PlayStation 5. Oh, what do you mean? Oh, there's 10 million copies out there.
So assuming PlayStation 5, we're going to see 2020, right?
Yeah.
Assuming PlayStation 5, possibly late 2020 is my guess.
Yeah.
Assuming they're also going to ship a headset with it, can they get that headset low enough so that a PlayStation 5 isn't also $600?
Right.
Because I think even in 2020, regardless of inflation or whatever have you, I think a $600 all-in-one is a steep price.
It is a steep price. Again, these are rumors, and it is very hard to imagine that they're going to find a $600 price value with the headset. Yeah. I hope that they just make that work, right? Because somehow I really do think they're going to sell a lot. Yeah. It's going to differentiate them from Xbox.
Can they afford to take a hit 30 million times is my question. Can they afford to take a $150 hit 30 million times, knowing that over the course of them selling those 30 million units, one, they're going to get production cheapness, they're going to get
right.
money back from people.
It's definitely going to be less sales the more money they charge. But I think even if they do charge more with the headset, I think it's going to be a welcome move by a lot of people. As long as you have some software to show, like, this is the future, right? So looking at that, looking at the arena, this is where I feel, again, Valve should have looked at that and be like, who's the leader right now? Let's create software. Let's talk to them, create software, and let's make sure this works, right? Make sure the bed is there. If we want to come up with our headset later, that's fine. But right now, the problem is there's so much hardware, right? Why are you adding to the problem?
Because it's not a problem for them, I guess.
I keep
leaning back on that, though.
This is just
not a problem for Valve.
This is just the rich kid wanting to do something.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a business marketing sense. There's no avenue that I see that VR Index, and there's no way in those meetings that they have about this headset that they make that, oh yeah, VR Index is going to dominate the market in 5 years. This is how we're going to do it. They're not having those conversations. Come on.
Well, they're not right, I'll say.
They're not right, but there's no way they're talking about
I'm sure
that.
There's people,
you think they're talking it up like that?
I'm sure there's people in there who are on the project who have to be that person, right? Like, they're like, hey, team, we're doing good stuff. This is going to be great. Yeah. Here's why we care about this device that we're making, and here's our 5-year plan. Like, I think those conversations are being had. I'm pretty sure that they're wrong. Yeah. Right? Like, I think that they might have even made the best headset ever. The problem is it's mute to the demographics of the marketplace right now. It did not take into account where things are. Yeah. It did not take into account what consumers are expecting, and it is definitely not disrupting. It is like it's a marginal increase, right? Yeah. Disruption was the Oculus, because we had nothing before, nothing to even compare. Where we are now is past the point of disruption. Now you're just adding to with a slight improvement.
Adding to a problem. Yeah, it's very confusing. And reading through this article, it just seems like whoever is calling the shots over there. And I can't imagine it's just Gabe, right? They have a board of directors, people working under Gabe, kind of dictating where the company should go. He probably gets the final say, sure. It's all wrong moves, man. It's like, what are you doing? They might be over betting on Half-Life 3 on their VR set being the killer app that will sell and move that headset. Let's play that scenario out. Do you feel that it's not going to sell millions of headsets?
Without knowing the price point of the headset being $1,000, if I was assuming they were going to be price competitive and like slot somewhere around 400 and then say the full Half-Life 3 experience is only on this, I would have bought in personally. Yeah. I think like I'm at the level where
try that.
Yeah. I could possibly swing that, or I know at least I would have an option to play it somehow, some way. Yeah. Because someone in my circle would have. Yeah. The regular consumer who is just a fan of Half-Life 1 and 2, who has a PC, who is playing games today, finding out that they have to pay $1,000 to then pay $30 to play Half-Life 3, or even if Half-Life 3 came pre-boxed in with every headset for free, just because you bought it, you get Half-Life 3 for free. Yeah. Even if that was the case, That is $1,000, Brandon.
Yeah.
$1,000.
That's a lot of money, man. With a PC.
For some fun. Like right now,
It's
do you know
much.
that's not that's a vacation. That is a plane ticket.
It's a move that I would expect
things.
if it's a similar move that they did with the Vive, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly, the Vive was priced at a higher range when they first came out after the
It
Oculus.
was like $699.
Yeah, it was
the
the higher value. They're following the same footsteps. It's like, can't you just forecast by looking back at where the Vive is right now? You're doing the exact same moves, right? That's where they are right now, and that's what you maybe be later, but probably not. You're not going to reach higher than HTC Vive success.
The main problem that these VR headset makers, it feels like to me, keep failing to realize is that the problem with the success of VR isn't fidelity in a sense, right? To the top level expert, or not the expert, but the connoisseur of VR, of course, is going to want the best VR experience whatsoever.
Yeah.
The VR industry is trying to solve the problem of just general adoption in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? So fighting over like 8, 9, 10 more frames a second is not what's happening. It's we can't get people to jump into the marketplace and give it a shot.
Yeah.
How do we solve that problem? And I promise you, it ain't the better headset that costs $1,000.
Yeah.
When people are gun shy about things, they don't want to have to commit $1,000.
No.
When I'm going to those timeshare meetings, they give me a free sandwich and they give me an hour presentation.
Yeah.
Then they hit me with the big price tag.
Yeah.
How much the timeshare costs.
It's such a weird move.
My first car was not a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? My first car was a Ford Mustang.
Yeah,
that I got at
yeah.
an auction.
Do
for
they have the
$3,000.
time? Yeah. Unless they have the time to kind of play that out the next 10 years with that price point. It's such a weird move. I don't understand it, man. They used to be so savvy with this stuff, and now they're just completely... I guess this is what a rich person does. It's like, I'm just going to do what I want. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
That's the type of move that I feel that's happening right now.
I wish Valve, if you opened up like a summer internship for me so I could go there and like see behind the scenes, I would fucking organize that company.
It's Charlie.
So well.
It's Willy Wonka, right? But yeah.
Without even knowing what kind of a job it would be, like I'm just saying this now. It's like, I don't know. I don't want to.
Well, it's true.
I feel like so many things are being done, but I also am not the rich like Larry. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if this does well, I'm a billionaire. If this sucks, I'm a billionaire.
Yeah, that's essentially what they're dealing with over there, because it is a move that basically tells us that it's like they don't care. Yeah. They don't care if it's successful or not. Yeah. I mean, there is a certain care, right? But it's like ego care. It's not like wallet. Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of money being put into this research.
Without that stepdad hand, what I call your shareholders. Yeah. Right. Who aren't billionaires. Yeah. Right. Who want to get closer to. Yeah. You know, financial prosperity of their own. Without that driving force behind decision making, I could see why Valve is in the position that they're in regards to growth, change, adoption, or future plans. Yeah. I can understand completely why they're exactly the way that they are. Yeah. I hope it changes, because indie developers still has an issue that we're trying to solve, which is discoverability, and Steam is in that best position to do that. Epic is definitely making great strides into helping with that, but Steam is clearly still the leader in this. They can literally come out with a blog post and just add 10 people to curate or something. It'll be a beginning that can be very prospering, man. It's like, hey, if it's not a money issue, the index isn't made to solve a money issue. It's a fun problem, right? It's like, hey, we should have our own headset. I'm sick of dealing with these other guys. Okay, but you know, if you're not expecting to make money out of it, you know, you would probably shift your focus on the moneymaker part, which is like, all right, how do we get indie developers back on our side, dude? I hope they're having these discussions, because I'm not seeing any results. All right, well, good luck, Valve. Good luck, indie developers. To the indie developers, I'll say this. Be very aware of where the marketplace is right now. Be less willing to protest and more willing to innovate. Innovate in regards to your technology, but also in regards to your marketing and business strategies. Yes. And that concludes today's
episode. We are here 10 a.m. every morning. Following up today's episode will be a Game Dev Unchained podcast episode, and it is a special one. We're going to do a Glassdoor confession. It's been a while. All right, so hang on. For anyone that is watching, we'll be back in 5 to 10 minutes.
Consider yourselves recapped.